All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let's get in a few minutes. Emir Hashem of Oros HaTeshuva. As Emir Hashem, this will be the last day for this week. As Baruch Hashem, we have Rosh Chodesh coming. Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan Haba Aleinu L'Tova. So remember, yesterday we left off on page 26. We left off in the end of footnote number 1. So Rav Kook introduced us in just chapter 4 in a very poetic and beautiful way about the concept of universal tshuva. That's whereas we normally think about tshuva as a very personal, individual thing. I commit an aveira, therefore I do tshuva. Rav Kook highlights the idea that there's a universal concept of tshuva. And in that universal concept of tshuva, the universe itself, the world itself does tshuva. Everything is trying to return to what it once was, to its pure and original untarnished state. So in the end of footnote number 1, if you remember again, he says, actually not even in the end, in footnote number 1, which is on page 26 on the handout that I sent out, and if you go about 4 lines into footnote number 1, he says, Yeser al Kain, Ritzona Adam Kishalei Atzmo. This is really beautiful. Lelo siyua shel koach hatshuva hashar ba'olamim. A person's personal tshuva by himself, literally again his individual will, without the assistance, ultimately again of universal tshuva, lo haya yachol lehiskabra al pigmei ha'adam v'chol shekin al pigmei ha'aviyah. Man's tshuva by itself would not be enough to help him overcome his flaws and to overcome, ultimately, again, his deficiencies. In other words, by myself, even with the greatest amount of willpower, tshuva is an impossible feat. I will say, remember again, the hardest thing in the world is, we spoke about this yesterday, is change. Change is the most difficult dynamic in the entire world. So Rav Kook posits, he says, how is it that a person is able to affect change within themselves? So if I'm just working on my own willpower, I'm just working on my own kohos, then Rav Kook says that is not enough to affect change. So how does change occur? Okay, listen to this. Mikubalaman anu shahabalitar misayin oso. So this is beautiful. It goes to the Gemara Masech Shabbos. What does the Gemara say? A person wants to become pure. Misayin oso. What does misayin oso mean? Misayin means they help him. Misayin oso, he is helped. Who is he helped by? So in general, whenever we see that Gemara, we assume who is it referring to? Who's giving the help? Who's giving the help? The Ribono Shel Olam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees what I want to do in life, right? But another way that Chazal expressed this idea is B'derech she'adam rotzeh leilech molichin oso. The path you want to go on, that's the path you're taking on. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees what my ratzon is, he sees what my will is, and he helps me along that path for the actualization of that personalistic will. But Rav Kook has such an interesting insight in this. Amra Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Klal Yisrael, Banai. Listen to how beautiful this is. What I say. Pischuli Pesach Echad Shal Tshuva Kichudesh Hamacha. This is a medrash from Shir Hashirim. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Klal Yisrael, my children, here's all I need you to do. Open up for me a needle, the size of an eye of a needle. Open up for me an opening. Create for me an opening the size of the eye of a needle. Vani poseach lahem psachim shiu agalos v'kranios nichnas bo, and I will enlarge it large enough that ultimately, again, wagons, and livestock will be able to pass through it. Now, what does that mean on a basic level? On a basic level, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says is like this: you start the process. All I need from you is to make the smallest opening. Just do something to create an opening for tshuva in your life. Do something to affect change. Do something to move yourself forward. Just start a little bit, a little opening. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll enlarge it. Habalitahir Misayin also. You want to become tar? I'll help you. The path you want to take, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take you on it. At the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, just concerned. Rav Kook says something amazing. So these are, we've seen these concepts before. We've heard these ideas before. What's interesting is the way Rav Kook interprets it. So we understand it ultimately again that it's referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Ribono Shel Olam is saying, you, Klal Yisrael, get started, my children get started, and I'll help you. Rav Kook says that's true, but there's an extra dynamic happening over here. Look at the underlined. Is underlined in good. The last piece of footnote number 1. Es trilas HaTeshuva omnam tzarich lasos ha'adam. Now, I'll say the way it works is like this. When it comes to tshuva, I must start the process. I must start the process. The beginning, the initiation must be done by me. B'yet, va'az hu nifkash im koach hatshuva ha'olami. Wow, Bossy, you hear that expression? Az hu nifkash im koach hatshuva ha'olami. After I begin the process, then I meet up with the power of universal tshuva. Wow, what an incredibly beautiful idea. So it's not just simply that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps me, right? If I begin, then Hashem helps me, of course. Rav Kook says there's another dynamic that's unfolding over here. When I begin my process, then suddenly I'm able to tap into a universal dynamic of tshuva. And that power of universal tshuva, that's the power that fuels the universe. Rav Kook would posit, that's the power that causes the trees to regrow after a dormant winter, right? That's the power that causes the sun to rise after it's set the previous night. That koach within nature, ultimately that causes nature to renew, is the very same koach HaTeshuva that man could tap into once he begins his process. But I will say, but the caveat is very profound. What's the caveat? The caveat is, you got to start it. You have to start it. No one and nothing can start the process of tshuva for you. But once I'm brave enough to begin that personalistic journey of change, I don't have to do it by myself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there to help me. The power of universal tshuva kicks in and pushes me along that journey as well. A really incredible, beautiful idea. We'll have to stop over here for today, Bosai. So again, start your own personal journey, and universal tshuva, the power of universal tshuva aids you along the way. Shkoyach, everyone.